श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादशङ्करं लोकशङ्करं शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः नमामि गौडपादञ्च शङ्करं श्रीसुरेश्वरं स्वामिनं सच्चिदानन्दमिन्द्रं तं ज्ञानरूपिणे Om. This has become a confused world. So, we were discussing Adhyasa. It is going on because the whole book is about Adhyasa only. The whole book is about Adhyasa. So naturally we go on. Now in the Purvapakshi's explanation of Adhyasa, that is avidya. So samsara is there in everybody's anubhava. How we understand samsara, the cause of samsara, accordingly we find the solution, isn't it? Now how is the samsara brought about and what is the solution for it? This is the real Vedanta. According to Shankara's understanding, Shankaracharya's understanding, it is due to Adhyasa. Adhyasa means a simple misunderstanding that you have no samsara. It is simple. That we have a misunderstanding that though we don't have any samsara, we are already Brahmaswarupam, we are already free from all samsara, yet one thinks that I am bound. This very thought that I am bound itself is Adhyasa, is a misunderstanding. Being free, yet you consider yourself to be bound. Being free by nature, you consider yourself to be bound. This very considering, this very thinking that I am bound is Adhyasa. Adhyasa means a misunderstanding, and this misunderstanding is not a something material thing. It is simply against the fact, a thinking against the fact that wrong thinking has to be corrected by looking at the fact once again, by looking at your nature, by examining your nature properly. In proper examination, you come to realize you are already free, you are already Brahma, you are never bound. That's all. This coming to discover that you are already free and thinking that you were bound and not free itself was a wrong thinking. This is what needs to be done. See how simple it is. This is what needs to be done. Now the Purvapakshi, instead of understanding samsara is simply due to misunderstanding, he is making it as a tangible reality, an event that has occurred, a substantial occurrence. He is taking it as a material occurrence. This is where he started the biggest mistake. Now he presents Adhyasa as a product, an objective. Objective means something substantial, not in terms of thinking. See, there are some problems which are only in thinking, and there are some problems which are actual. Actual problems need to be changed, corrected actually. Actually means the situation. Sometimes what happens, the things which are lying there, they are wrong. From a distance you see them, they are wrong. You have to go and change them, transform them from one place to another place. There you have to readjust the things. Another is, they look like that from a distance, but the things as they are correct. One is, they appear to be so from a distance. So the appearance alone, if your perception is wrong, only correct your perception, things are okay. Things as they stand are okay. It is your way of looking, it is your way of looking is wrong, that you correct it. That's what we means. When Shankaracharya says Jnanam alone corrects it, nothing needs to be done. This implies that it is only the wrong perception and nothing else. Nothing. We are talking of the absolute truth, okay, not about the worldly events, worldly objects and events and society, all that we are not talking. That is okay. Within the world we need a lot of change. Society needs change, and that also there is no absolute change and there is no absolute correction. It goes on, it is an endless process. Okay. Regarding the society, politics and the world and economic situation, health and people's behavior, family, all these things, there is no permanent solution, and nobody should keep quiet also. There is no permanent solution. There is a tentative solution, but nobody should keep quiet considering that it is only a tentative. We have to continuously work, and what you work will have a tentative effect, and again you have to work, again there will be tentative effect, again you have to work, again there will be tentative effect. It's an endless. You have to continuously go on. It's like you feel hungry, you eat food, again after some time feel hungry, again you eat food, again feel hungry. It goes on. There is no permanent solution, and you don't expect. You don't expect any permanent solution, and that's how it is and it should be. So we are not talking about the worldly things, we are talking about the absolute truth. Okay? In the absolute truth, the thing itself, in the nature of your Atma, the nature of the truth, absolute truth about the world itself is intact, unaffected, remains ever free, ever same. It is that absolute truth looked at wrongly. The wrong looking alone is to be corrected, because people seeing that the suffering is serious, you see, people seeing that suffering is serious, something has really changed, something has really happened, people want to do something materially change the thing. This is really a problem. People find it difficult to believe that it is only in my perception, you mean? You mean all the problem is only in my misunderstanding? No real actual problem at all? Yes, it is. There is no real actual problem. And this seems to be unbelievable for people. We feel that the world, there needs to be real change, because there is a lot of suffering. We need to change it really. But people don't know. All that is in your wrong looking. The wrong looking itself is bringing about an individuality, an ego. See, all problems are reduced to ego. You just see them. All our problems can be reduced to ego. And ego is individuality. All our problems are due to individuality. It is individuality, it is ego that is suffering. And as long as you retain that individuality, suffering can't be removed. It is the very individuality needs to be questioned. Am I individual subject to suffering? This is the thing. As long as I am an individual, an embodied individual, suffering is inevitable. Now, being an individual, you being an individual jiva, suffering cannot be changed permanently. You may tentatively shifting, but permanently for good. Once for good, you can't remove all suffering. Fear, suffering, worry, tension, insecurity, all these things can't be removed permanently until the individuality remains, because all these qualities are not additional to individuality, they are inherent to the individuality. Note, all these problems, suffering, fear of death, worry, tension, all these things are intrinsic to the very individuality. There is no individuality without all these sufferings. All these sufferings pertain to individuality, the jiva. So as long as you are jiva, all these things become inevitable. Okay. Therefore, remaining individual, trying to solve these problems, only tentatively you suppress them, you forget them, you avoid them, tentatively you just look as if they don't exist, or you get preoccupied with something else, or you try to defend them, they are good for us. See, people try to give OC. See, everybody has a fear of death. Is there any solution? I'll tell you, simply I ask a question. Has anybody found a solution that there is a fear of death? Every jiva is afraid of dying. Is there anybody who loves to die? You may have some ideal that if I die after death something will get it, but death you are, death you have, you are to die, and the death is and inherently creates a fear. There is a subtle fear in everybody. Nobody wants to die. But in all the schools of philosophy, they tell you, once you die, afterwards you go to some heaven, some Vaikuntha or some Kailasa or somewhere, there you will remain eternal. Once you die, later you will become eternal. But I am asking, I am afraid of death, I want to be free from death, and you say, you die once, later I will assure you deathlessness. Does it make sense? You die once, I will assure you deathlessness later. See, isn't it? Man doesn't want to die, he wants to be free from death. And Advaita is the only one, it says, there is no such a thing called death at all. Death itself is a wrong looking, is a misunderstanding. Individuality, just as an individuality is a wrong judgment, wrong way of looking at yourself. In your real nature, you are already right now free from death. Okay? Right now you are free from death. Not only you, everybody on the earth. There is nobody who suffers from death. Because everybody is the same absolute truth and nobody has death. Death is only a wrong way of looking and wrongly taking yourself to be an individual who is subject to birth and death. Subject to birth and death means what? Subject to change. Means subject to time and place. So you are looking at yourself through time and space. Looking yourself through certain relationship, certain individual conditioning. A conditioning comes into effect in a certain situation. But the reality is, the truth is that nobody is subject to any time, space or object or anything. That is the reality. So you look at yourself in a right angle, you are already free. Nobody has death. Death itself is a myth. Okay? This understanding really frees. It doesn't make you free from death. It makes you see that you are already free from death. You won't become free from death. There is no such thing called death, and death was never existed. It was only a misunderstanding, wrong thinking. Everybody is ever free. Death itself is a myth, it doesn't exist. By thinking wrongly, it is just like a baby is frightened that there is a ghost here. Baby refuses to go to the near window. Oh, Mom, there is a... See, in a semi-darkness or darkness, baby is afraid, it doesn't want to go. Mom, it is all dark, I'm afraid. Why? Because the ghost comes. Where is the ghost? Baby doesn't understand. Where something is not visible, where something, mind wants a clarity. See, when there is a good light during daytime, you see very clear, here is a table, here is a chair, this is a door, this is a wall, and you see very clearly. You are not afraid. If it is a dark, in the dark, you don't know what it is. Mind starts imagining that you are afraid. Oh, you don't know what happens. Something unknown might happen. Because that unknownness is a fear. Unknownness itself is not fear, but unknownness gives room to imagine negative things. See, unknownness, simple ignorance is not fear. Simple ignorance is not fear. See, too small baby, a few months old baby is not afraid because baby is innocent, ignorant. But a little grown up baby, a kid, is afraid because when is the kid starts getting afraid of, feeling afraid of? When you start imagining. Okay? Simple ignorance gives rise to negative imagination, and that imagination creates fear. Simple ignorance not. So therefore, when you don't know, there is always an imagination. That imagination creates a problem. But here, so therefore, when you don't know, you imagine all kinds of negative things. Here, you don't know that you are already free from time and space. Your existence is all-pervasive, universal existence. Your very nature is consciousness. If that is my nature, and if I am aware of that nature, there is no fear. There is no fear of death, and there is no fear of suffering. And once I take myself to be an individual bound to the body, mind and sense organs, then all the sufferings, birth and death and all kinds of relationships, tensions, problems, everything starts. So the problem is inevitable. Death is inevitable as long as you are an individual. See, death is inevitable as long as you are an individual, because individuality and being subject to death are synonymous. I tell you, it is the jiva who is subject to death. As long as you are a jiva, the change, transformation from one condition to another condition is inevitable. Therefore, it is not that jiva is dying, the very nature of jiva is subject to death. The very nature of jiva, always, because jivatvam is individual. Individuality by its very nature is bound by time and place. Okay, individuality by its very nature is bound by time and place. This limitation itself is a fear. This limitation, limited by time and place itself, is death. What do you mean by death? Limitation. You are bound by time and place, bound by certain conditions. You change the condition, you feel you are not the same. You become different. That losing your old condition, assuming another condition, is a death. Because you identify with a particular condition. And as an individual, you are bound to be identified with a certain condition, certain situation, certain time, certain things. So, fear of death is inevitable as long as you are jiva. Hunger and thirst, okay, worry and tension, loss and gain, all these things are inevitable. Pain and pleasure are inevitable as long as you are an individual. Gain and loss, positive, negative, favorable, unfavorable, these things are inevitable. So as long as you are an individual, these things are inevitable. Then what do? People think that individual I am, but only these other situations, context, those we attribute given individual events or certain objects, certain conditions, certain situations are responsible for my suffering. If suppose the situation were different, I would not be suffering. Okay, if the situation was still somewhat different, I would not be suffering. This is the misunderstanding Vedanta tries to correct. It is not that in the fear and death, fear and suffering are additionally coming to the individuality. Note, it is not that fear of death, sufferings and all those things are coming and getting attached to individuality. Not that. It is the very individuality which inevitably feels the fear of death and fear of suffering. Okay, suffering and fear of death. All these things go with the very individuality. It is inevitable. Suffering is inevitable. Death here is inevitable for the individual. So individuality and samsara are synonymous. Therefore, the problem doesn't pertain to individuality. Individuality itself is the problem. Okay? It is the very individuality. It is the very jivatvam. That is the real problem. Therefore, Vedanta addresses all your samsara is not to the individual. Okay, I repeat it. Samsara is not to the individual. It is the individuality that is samsara. Okay, it is samsara is not to the jiva. It is the jivatvam itself that is samsara. The very jivatvam is samsara. If jivatvam is samsara, then this is what I am. This is what I am. What can I do? Yes. Then you don't know what to do. Because you have become individual not by your choice. And you don't know when you have become. And you don't know whether you have become or you are by nature jiva. You are by nature individual or you have become individual jiva. You don't know. I only know that I am an individual jiva. I am an individual. Okay, subject to change, subject to interaction, subject to suffering and pain and pleasure and all. This is what I am. Now, this is where Vedanta comes and tells, you see, this individuality is not your real nature. That means samsara is not your real nature. By your very nature, you are free from individuality. You'll be surprised, is it? If that is the true, I am really happy. But how? If that is the case, I am really happy. But how? How to understand that? That looks too imaginary, that looks a false hope, but it doesn't look real. Is it real? I am always individual. Have I ever existed? Have I ever existed free from individuality? Do I ever find myself being free from individuality? I am individual. And I am talking to you as an individual. I am suffering samsara, good and bad and all these things. This is what I am individual. Can I imagine that I am not an individual? And I am something different from individual? How? Even to imagine I should exist as an individual. So it might be true, but it doesn't look true. It doesn't look to be true because you can't even imagine. This is where Shastra comes and tells you, you are free from individuality by your nature. Look at your deep sleep. In deep sleep, you exist, no doubt about it. But you exist free from your individuality. You have no fear of death. You have no worry, no tension, no relationship, no second thing that frightens you, that pressurizes you, that threatens you. A second thing, sometimes favorable, sometimes unfavorable. It frightens you, threatens you, pressurizes you, the second thing. But there is nothing second to you. And you always exist. Exist because you are the very existence. Deep sleep is your direct experience is telling you. It's okay, but I don't exist all the time in deep sleep. But again, I have to come back to waking state. This is where we have to help you to understand. Vedanta helps you to understand that you have a wrongly looking yourself, and the stand which you are taken, and the stand from which you are looking at yourself, you have to look as an individual only. So it is not your mistake. The stand from which you are looking at yourself, that makes you look as an individual, subject to birth and death, subject to suffering. It is inevitable, you can't escape. It is choiceless. You being a jiva is choiceless as long as you are looking at yourself from the standpoint which you are looking at. And this standpoint is so instinctive. This is what means a swabhavika adhyasa. Okay, this is what we mean swabhavika adhyasa. There is an instinctive standpoint which we are looking at, from which we are looking at ourselves. So this is a naturally looking at myself. So I look as an individual only. What else I can see? I am a thinker, I am a knower, I am a doer, I am an experiencer. Karta, bhokta, jnata. I am a jnata, knower, interacting with the world with my eyes and sense organs I see. I am a karta, I do something. Something or other I keep doing, good or bad, but I do something. Whether good or bad, I do. I have no choice but do. I have no choice except doing. I keep doing something or other. I have no choice except experiencing something or other, good or bad. Pain and pleasure, something I keep experiencing. There is a continuous series of experiences. So I have no choice. This is what I am. Then Vedanta says, this is just a wrong standpoint. Now the Purva Pakshi, this we have told before and again we have been telling. Because this what is important has to be repeated. And this is the only crux of Vedanta. This is the only thing that needs to be understood. So here one thing. Now the Purva Pakshi, how Purva Pakshi has explained the same problem slightly differently. He also means it is adhyasa, it is a misunderstanding, it is ajnanam, you have to correct with jnanam. This basic point is accepted by Shankara Vedanta and post-Shankarite Mula Vidya Vedanta. Within Advaita there are two sections, two branches. Shankara Vedanta, one Advaita, there is a Mula Vidya Vedanta. Okay. So in these two Vedantas, what Shankara touched is direct, and they touch it, the same thing they try to explain somewhat differently. It becomes complicated. A wrong explanation, it is a over explanation rather. Unnecessary explanation that creates a problem. See, What they say, the jivatvam, the adhyasa, the misunderstanding is not simply misunderstanding. We said Shankaracharya told it is a simple misunderstanding. They told misunderstanding is an objective misunderstanding. It is a material misunderstanding. It is not a misunderstanding in terms of thought, in terms of perception. They mean it is not simply misunderstanding in terms of thought. They say it is a misunderstanding. Along with the misunderstanding, there is a material change also. Now this is where the problem starts. If the problem is a real bhavarupam, adhyasa is a bhavarupa, something, a material, substantial object is jiva bhava. If jiva is a substantial thing, and that is produced by another substance, a causal substance produces this adhyasa. They presented adhyasa is a production. Adhyasa is a material, it is a produced one, and production needs a cause, and that cause is not imposed. Cause is not adhyasa. Okay? Cause is not adhyasa. With this, what happens? With this kind of prakriya means the teaching method. The teaching method or the way of explaining the problem, and the method is not a physical method. Method is in terms of thinking. Okay? Method is teaching method, understanding method. It is not a method of action, method of thinking, method of understanding. Okay? So, in their method of thinking, in their method of understanding, there is a wrong way. They present adhyasa is a material, and it is a material cause. In these things, what happens? Okay, let them say material, so what? Ultimately, they are telling me jnana, it will go away. Some people say like that. Why are you unnecessarily creating? All Advaitans are Advaitins. Everybody talks that by jnana avidya goes away. Okay, if they say avidya is a material, so what? Let them say. Why are you creating differences? Whether Shankara or post Shankara, all are one. I have faced all kind of these things, this kind of explanation. Okay, they say that avidya is a material. You say adhyasa is only avidya, and only misunderstanding is avidya. But ultimately, they also accept that it goes by jnanam. Why are you creating unnecessarily quarrel, unnecessarily division? Okay? There is a real problem, I tell you. When they say it is bhavarupam, two things. Bhavarupam, if samsara is a material, and it is caused by a material cause, then something substantial won't go by jnanam, isn't it? A material vastu doesn't go by jnanam, because jnanam is only jnapakam natu karakam. This is most important. I think this is misread, because Naiyayikas, Vaisheshikas, they are all confused. Naiyayikas don't see the difference between jnana production and karma production. Karma produces four kinds of phalams. Utpadyam, apyam, vikaryam, samskaryam. You know this well. I don't have to repeat it. But they say jnanam is also a production by pramana. They call pramana is a karanam, jnanam is a production, karma is a sadhanam, and karma phalam is a production. They take jnanam is also a production. And because of this influence of Naiyayika, Vaisheshika and other schools of philosophy, these post-Shankarite philosophy, called Mula Vidya philosophy, also unconsciously or consciously borrowed these wrong things which do not fit in Vedanta. They borrowed these wrong ideas. They consider jnanam is also a production. One thing. Jnanam is a production. And second thing is, jnanam also really does something. Shankaracharya says jnanam is not a karakam. It is a jnapakam. It just illumines. It doesn't bring about any change. They say jnanam, once that Mula Vidya vadins, if ajnanam is a material positive substance, if it is a positive substance ajnanam, jnanam Jnanam, after being produced, it has to destroy it. They say Jnanam destroys avidya. This is where the difference arises. Shankara's prakriya is rising of Jnanam is, that's all. Ajnanam goes away. There is no Ajnanam. The rising of Jnanam, going of Ajnanam, both are same. It is like bringing the light and going away darkness are not two. They say bringing of light is one and darkness being destroyed is another step. Darkness is a substantial, something like a fog in winter. Have you seen in winter early morning fog when the sun rises? Even after sun, darkness, as the sun rises, there is no darkness. Do you feel sun rises, the light comes and fights with darkness, and within few seconds it succeeds in driving it out, melting it out? Something like a fog in winter. When the sun rises, even after the sun rises, you can see the dim, hazy things here. It is a thinny, smoky things that is covering the whole area. And the sun has to fight within few minutes, 5 to 10 minutes or half an hour. Then the morning winters, fog will melt away. Then you can see the bright light and warmth in the climate. Okay, the very rising of the sun is not the end of fog. Rising the sun is not the end of fog. Sun, after rising, it fights and it defeats the fog and melts it away. Similarly, they try to explain. The darkness is a something positive substance. Shankara Bhashya says darkness is a simple absence of light. Light coming and darkness going. They are not two. It is only one talking in two sentences. Whether you say light has come or whether you say darkness has gone, both mean just the same. It is just synonymous. Darkness going away, light coming, both are just one. It is only two ways of telling. Two different ways of telling the same fact. Light is, darkness is not. They say light coming, darkness destroying are not one, they are two steps. Light comes, it destroys darkness, because darkness is something substantial, something positive. Similarly, avidya is something positive. Rising of jnanam is not enough. Rising of jnanam has to destroy the ajnanam. Ajnanam is causal avidya, bhava rupam, something substantial. Therefore, these two steps is against Shankara's prakriya. This explanation. One is Adhyasa is something material. It is produced by causal avidya. Now once they say Adhyasa is something material, they have a causal. And cause has to be destroyed how? By jnanam. This is a contradiction. Jnanam cannot destroy something positive. Jnanam is, once there is a jnanam, there is no darkness, that's all. Jnanam coming and darkness going, they are not two. Jnanam is, there is no darkness. When there is jnanam, there is no ajnanam, that's all. This is Shankara's prakriya. So, according to Purvapakshi, jnanam janitva bhavarupa avidyam nashayati. Jnanam being born, it destroys avidya. It is born and also destroys avidya. Then means not two steps, two functions, let us say. Jnanam rising, destroying avidya are the two functions. They say two functions are taking place. Do you find in your life two things are taking place? Light is coming and darkness is going. Do you see the two? Why unnecessarily explaining like that? This is how they go, and they make Vedanta more complicated. Okay. Jnanam janitva bhavarupa vidyam nashayati iti purvapakshaha. Siddhanti ಏನು ಹೇಳ್ತಾನೆ? ಭಾವರೂಪತ್ವ ಉಕ್ತ್ಯ ಅನಧ್ಯಸ್ತತ್ವ ಮುಕ್ತಂ ಭವತಿ. Once you say bhavarupam avidya, avidya produces adhyasa. That means before adhyasa is produced, there is a bhavarupa avidya. There is a positive causal, there is a positive causal avidya which produces adhyasa. That means before adhyasa is produced, there is a causal avidya. In these things, one mistake is that causal avidya is not adhyasta. Now what does jnanam do? Jnanam only corrects adhyasa, jnanam doesn't destroy a substance. Jnanam doesn't destroy any positive substance. Jnanam only corrects your avidya. That means what? Jnanam corrects your standpoint. From this standpoint, you shift your standpoint, that's all. Jnanam only shifts your standpoint, doesn't alter materially anything. Shankara says, Jnanam Jnapakam Natu Karakam. Means what? There is no material alteration. It is only shifting the standpoint from wrong angle to right angle. You understand the Jnanam and Karma. The difference between Jnanam and Karma is the biggest problem. It is only in Advaitins, and all other people have partly mixed up this Jnana and Karma. And post-Shankarites are influenced by this Nyaya, Vaisheshika and other schools of philosophy, and because of their borrowing from other schools, adulterating pure Vedanta by the other schools is the mistake of post-Shankarites. Swamiji pointed out clearly, they are Vedantins, they are Advaitins, but unfortunately, unconsciously or consciously borrowed certain elements from other schools of philosophy which do not go with pure Vedanta, Shankara Vedanta or Upanishadic Vedanta. This borrowing has adulterated Vedanta. This is what Swamiji wanted to restore it by correcting by removing those adulterations, borrowings from the other schools which do not go with Advaita. Okay? People ask, what is the difference? What is the difference? Swamiji ಏನು ಮಾಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ? What is Sachidananda Swamiji's? This is what I am telling you. Their borrowings from other schools of philosophy mixed up in Advaita, and that complicated it. What is that? Now they say when a cause produces Adhyasa, and the cause itself is not a misunderstanding, is not an Adhyasa. Okay. Tena adhyastasya jnanena nasha prasangaha, tena anadhyastasya jnanena nashabhavaha. If anadhyasta, what is not imposed, what is not adhyasta, cannot be removed by jnanam. This is what Shankara stand, Sachidananda Swamiji stand. Jnanam can only, what is adhyasa? Misunderstanding. In adhyasa, how do you correct it? Shift your standpoint from wrong to right. That's all you do. Shifting the standpoint, not making any alteration materially. No material alteration. They say Mula Vidya is a positive, it needs to be materially destroyed. But does Jnanam do? They say yes, Jnanam does materially destroy. The very nature of Jnanam is misunderstood. The very nature of Avidya is wrongly explained. This is what the difference between they and us. ಇದರಿಂದ ಏನಾಗ್ತದೆ? ಜ್ಞಾನಸ್ಯ ಕಾರಕತ್ವ ಪ್ರಸಂಗಃ. Jnana becomes a karaka, natu jnapaka. You see the difference? One is, two things here. Avidya is a positive, it needs to be destroyed. That means the nature of avidya is difference in the nature of avidya. Then the nature of jnanam also. The nature of jnanam, okay. Nature of jnanam then. They wrote one big paragraph. I think it takes time to read. I'll read later. I'll read later after completing the talk. Now let me continue. So, jnanam, the very nature of jnanam, they are making it as a karakam. Jnanam simply is, as the jnana. Now, we'll discuss that next point also. So, the two things are, one is the nature of avidya is a positive substance, then it needs to be destroyed. Then nature of jnanam becomes karakam, not jnapakam. Then okay, you may say okay, even if they say doesn't matter. They are talking of jnanam only. Once jnanam comes, all that goes away. So what? Why unnecessarily again Shankara, post-Shankara differences? Mula Vidya and Advaita. See, I was also a Mula Vidya Vadin. When I have left Mula Vidya and came to this Shankara's Prakriya, I must have considered, you see them all angles hundreds of times, checked, rechecked myself whether am I wrong. After due considerations of all those Prakriyas, I came to this Adhyasa Prakriya. Okay, I know all those details, because this is what we were discussing anyway. I have been learning and teaching. I tell you, it is not simply Jnanam alone. The real problem comes here, I tell you. the very vichara, nature of vichara and jnanam changes. This is where the real problem. If you take jnanam as a karakam and not jnapakam, if you take that avidya removal is not, according to Shankara, avidya removal is only rising of jnanam alone is avidya removal. There is no such thing called removal. Avidya doesn't exist. It is only shifting the standpoint. Avidya doesn't exist. That's all. There is no removal. There is no destruction. They took destruction literally, that jnana comes and destroys avidya. This is the mistake. So, if you take, according to Shankara, jnanam only simply shifting the standpoint, and avidya removal is only nothing but understanding that there is no avidya. There is no removal of avidya. Understanding that there is no avidya. See the difference. You don't remove the existing avidya. You don't destroy, materially destroy the positive avidya. You take a standpoint where avidya is not there. That's all. You come to understand avidya is not there. This is what jnanam does it. How beautiful it is. You take a stand of Brahma where avidya is not there. You don't remove avidya, you don't destroy avidya. Then why do you say avidya nivritti, avidya nashaha? These are all technical way, figurative way of telling. That's why it is a Vedantic term, technical term. Don't take literally that removal of avidya and all that. Okay? So this thing. Now, because of wrongly interpreting the nature of avidya, wrongly understanding the nature of jnanam, now the wrongly understanding the nature of vichara. This is where the difference creates. In the nature of vichara also changes. So the nature of vichara is only to just for the knowledge to give rise to knowledge. The purpose of vichara is only to give rise to knowledge. Now for them, if Brahman is something to be, if there is a positive substance avidya covering the Brahman, then you have to destroy the covering. Isn't it? You have to destroy the covering. So do you need to destroy the covering? So avidya pratibandha removal, they say. We also say removal of avidya pratibandha, removal of the obstruction called avidya. How do you remove? By shifting the standpoint, you circumvent the obstruction by shifting the standpoint. I tell you, cloud is, I'll give you an example, you understand better. Cloud is covering the sun. I am on the earth, and you look into the sky. You see that in the winter, in the rainy season, a thick cloud, a dark cloud is covering the sun. Sun is on the other side. What do? Do you wait for the cloud to travel, cloud to move away, or do you push the cloud to away from a different, or do you burn away the cloud? Tell me. Do you burn away the cloud, or do you push the cloud another place? If you burn, it is a karma, not jnanam. If you push, again it is a karma, not jnanam. Okay, then what do? Your standpoint that you are standing on the earth has to be shifted from the earth to the sun, the other side of the cloud. You come to the other side of the cloud. For the sun there is no cloud. That's all. For the sun there is no cloud. You are only shifting the standpoint. That's all. You look from the standpoint of the sun. Cloud is not there for you, because sun is sun, ever illumining. This is what? Simply shifting the standpoint. Therefore, this is in the example, this is the drishtanta. Now coming to the darshtanta, you understand better. Now if avidya is only an adhyasa and not a material, not a bhava rupam, what happens? You only have to shift your standpoint. Now if you take, now what they take is, in waking state there is mula vidya, in dream state there is mula vidya, deep sleep there is mula vidya. There is, in all the three states there is a bhava rupam avidya. You have no experience where you are free from avidya. You have no experience where you are free from avidya. That means avidya is a real cloud covering it. You have to push it or you have to burn it, because it is really covering. And now Vedantins say avidya is not there in deep sleep. That means what goes away can be understood as mithya. What goes away? Because if Atma transcends, Atma is free from avidya, if you see Atma is free from avidya, then you can understand from the standpoint of Atma, avidya is not there. Okay. So therefore, in Sushupti, if avidya is not there, then you can understand from the Sushupti standpoint, you are Advitiyam and avasthas are totally false. Because they don't exist for the Sushupti Swarupam. Now from the waking standpoint, you have to shift your standpoint to Sushupti. This is Jnanam. But for them, if Sushupti is also avidya, dream also is avidya, Jagrat is also avidya, avidya is continuously there in all the three states, you have no state where you are free from avidya. You have no anubhava, to which anubhava is the standpoint you have to shift to. But you have no anubhava to shift to. The anubhava which you have at the moment is all the three states have only avidya. Now where do you shift your standpoint to? You only have to destroy the cloud, you have no standpoint to shift. We say your waking standpoint is only a wrong Adhyasa standpoint. You shift to your Sushupti standpoint, you have no waking state, that's all. This is Jnanam only shifting the standpoint. Then avidya is automatically not there. Avidya is already not there, you come to realize it. Jnanam only helps you to understand what is, it doesn't remove. But if you take avidya is there in waking state, is there in dream state, is there in deep state, in all the three states, then how do you remove? Then you have to remove it. They say Jnanam comes and removes it. So in this vichara, the difference comes in vichara also. In vichara, they are looking for another anubhava where avidya is destroyed. If you have waking, dream and deep sleep, in all the three states avidya is present, then where is the state which is free from avidya? A new avidya rahita state, anubhava. An anubhava, Brahma anubhava which is free from avidya is another anubhava is yet to come. It is not there in you. An anubhava which is free from avidya is yet to come. It is not there in you. A new anubhava has to rise. A new anubhava has to rise if you go by the Mula Vidya Prakriya. Okay? If you go by Mula Vidya Prakriya, a new anubhava has to rise because you have no anubhava. All the anubhavas you have are only avidya anubhavas. Waking, dream state, deep sleep state. All the three states you have avidya. You have no state where you are free from avidya. Then you have no anubhava drishti which is free from avidya. In technically we call them anvaya vetireka. There is no vetireka for avidya. Those who know already Vedanta, they understand this thing. Anvaya vetireka. No, there is no vetireka for avidya. You don't exist independent of avidya. If you don't see yourself independent of avidya, you can't understand avidya is mithya, adhyasa is mithya, jagat is mithya. But for them, if avidya is all the time there in all the three experiences, you only have to wait for that anubhava where avidya becomes free. And in a common man's life, there is no anubhava which is free from avidya. That means you are on this side, you are seeing a cloud. Cloud has to be broken, or you have to push aside, you have to burn it, or you have to break it. There is no other way. But Jnanam doesn't break, doesn't destroy, doesn't burn, doesn't push aside, doesn't do anything. This is what Shankara's Prakriya is. According to Shankara's Prakriya, Jnanam is only shifting the standpoint. Now if you see that in Sushupti there is no avidya, you can shift your standpoint from waking to the Sushupti. But they say even in Sushupti there is avidya. Shifting your standpoint from waking to Sushupti doesn't help. See, note the point. If you shift your standpoint from waking to Sushupti, it doesn't help according to Mula Vidya, because even in Sushupti same avidya continues. Now where will you go? You have no anubhava in your life which is free from avidya. Then you have to create a new anubhava. Then that is not jnanam, that is a karma. This is the mistake. Because while doing vichara, their mind is waiting, their mind is looking for a new anubhava. In the vichara, their mind is looking for a new anubhava where you will become free from avidya. So avidya will go away, jnanam will rise, avidya will go away, another experience will come. So in vichara itself, mind is going wrong. If the prakriya is wrong, the very vichara goes wrong. Therefore they say, even if you get jnanam, partly avidya goes away, partly remains. So even in Jivan Mukta, an avidya lesha continues. Only after the death of the body, total avidya will go away. Now this is only a promise of tomorrow, not an experience right now. This is the mistake in their prakriya. Okay. So in Shankara's prakriya, Sushupti is an anubhava which is free from avidya. Right now you can shift. That means you are free from your Adhyasa. When you are free from Adhyasa, take that standpoint of Adhyasa Rahita Brahman, then Adhyasa doesn't exist from your standpoint. This is Jnanam. So Jnanam is only taking another standpoint. In that another standpoint, you have a different understanding. That old understanding itself goes away. Goes away on its own. It goes away means it doesn't exist. Jnanam only shifts the standpoint. Jnanam only helps you to understand, doesn't alter anything materially. So here, avidya is a material for them. Avidya is only a misunderstanding for Shankaras. Then Jnanam destroys that material positive ignorance for them. For Shankara, Jnanam only shifts your standpoint and helps you to see that it is not there already. You are already free and avidya is not there, that's all. There is no removal of avidya. Avidya is not there, you are already free. And when there is a difference between in these 2 points, the third point also the difference comes in the very nature of vichara. In the nature of vichara, they are waiting for another anubhava where avidya will go away. After going away, another anubhava will come. They are waiting for another experience where avidya will go away. Avidya going away and a new anubhava has to rise. In Shankara's prakriya, there is no new anubhava. You only look at the existing anubhava and the wrong standpoint gets corrected. And in Sushupti anubhava drishti, Jagat is not there. Avidya is not there. Your individuality is a false. You understand your individuality doesn't exist for you. You are already non-dual Brahman. Okay. So in the difference in avidya, difference in jnanam, and difference in vichara. For sake of this, Swamiji is presenting little more technically, but the essence is this. If you keep this in mind, and the explanation of Swamiji can be understood, becomes very easy. How at every step they are presenting differently. The very nature of avidya is something positive, substance like a dark, substance like a fog. Jnanam, the difference in vichara, difference in jnanam, function of jnanam, and difference in nature of avidya. Okay? Nature of avidya, there is a difference. The functioning of jnanam, the affecting of jnanam. How does the jnanam remove ignorance? How does the jnanam affect the removal of ignorance? In this there is a difference. Then how do you do the vichara? In the 3 points, the difference is there. I think I have explained sufficiently. I have repeated also. I think the point is clear. It is now 54 minutes. 54 minutes we'll stop with today. And tomorrow will be Vedanta Sara, and the day after tomorrow we'll continue. If you keep this background in view, now Swamiji's explanation, the Purva Paksha and the Siddhanti's explanation becomes easy. Okay? Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namah Hari Om